fellow runners, my name is Doug, and in today's video I'd like to provide some tips and lessons learned that I got from running for 40 years plus now as a regular runner from a teenager till the present and still going strong. I've done probably 150 or more races over all those years. Varying from 5-kilometer road races all the way up to the marathon, and also including some triathlons and duathlons. I'm going to mostly talk about training today, and this video is intended to anybody who is interested in getting a different perspective from somebody who's been doing it for a long time. My overall approach towards this is moderation and balance. I found this has been a very good piece of advice in many aspects of people's lives, right? Everything in moderation and balancing things in your life. And so I'm going to kind of come from that perspective, and I've been able to find that I've been able to meet all of my running goals that I really was going after by kind of going from this balanced approach. And one of the things that contributed to that balanced approach was an article that I read in Runner's World magazine back in the late 80s, early 90s. I was really trying to find the article so I could get some exact quotes, and unfortunately I could not find it. It's from a while ago. But it basically was either written by or an interview with Dick Beardsley, who was one of my heroes of running from that era. Famously ran a showdown with Alberto Salazar in one of the greatest Boston Marathon races ever. Anyways, the advice that he gave in this article was that basically only 3 runs during the week really count: your long run, your tempo run, and some type of interval training. And I thought about that. I was involved with a lot of different things. I wanted to stay athletic and do other things like play volleyball and play tennis and golf, and I was into bicycle riding, and so that really hit home that I could actually accomplish my goals by just focusing on those 3 runs. And it kind of went on to say, the other runs, you can do other runs, recovery runs, things like that. But you really need to focus on those 3. And what I did is I kind of took that and said, those are the only 3 runs that I really need to do. And so generally throughout my running career, I've really just focused on those 3 runs a week. So there's a lot of times where I'm only doing 3 runs a week. And what I do is I fill in, and I think this is healthy for many of you. Instead of trying to fill those other days with easy runs and recovery runs, to introduce some cross training. Like I said earlier in my life, I was playing I was in volleyball leagues, playing tennis, golfing, riding my bike. I also got involved with triathlons. I have to say that triathlon training, it's time consuming, but just running 3 days a week and filling those other days with swimming and biking, I was probably in the best shape of my life doing triathlons, and I think it's probably healthier on your body to have that cross training. Now that I'm in my 50s, I've been supplementing my training with walking instead of doing recovery runs on the off days. Walking, doing yoga. A lot of runners could benefit from doing something like yoga or regular stretching. So I just pop in a YouTube video, a yoga video or a stretching video, and do that. And then I've also been engaged in try to stay doing weight training at least a couple days a week. And so I would recommend this moderation, and people think that they need to run more. And I would argue that you don't. If you really focus on those 3 runs, the long run, it's all based on your goals. So a long run, if you're just a beginner, your long run might just be to finish a 5K distance, right? So you want to run a 5K race. You may have two other runs during the week that are a little bit shorter, and then work your way up to a 5K distance. For as you get more experience those long runs would increase. Um, the tempo run, I think, is a very important run, and it's also one that I find is my favorite run. I like my long, easy runs, but tempo run is kind of that comfortably fast pace. A lot of the articles will say it's what you can sustain for about an hour, and you're trying to build that capability to kind of push up your anaerobic threshold and be able to operate near that for longer periods of time. And it's, for me, it's somewhere between a 10K and a half marathon race pace. And so I actually adjust my tempo runs depending on what I'm really trying to train for. So if I'm running 10Ks, I may run my tempos a little bit faster to try to emulate racing, to get a race pace down for a 10K. And then for a half marathon, use it for that. For interval training is something that everybody should do once you start to get in good enough shape, and it can be anything from doing hill workouts to fartlek workouts or intervals on a track or some set course that you're doing. Fartleks are something that I found to be the most convenient because fartleks you can just basically, you can either plan ahead, which is it's basically I think it's Swedish for speed work, but you basically can find a place and say, hey, from here to that sign up a half mile ahead, I'm going to run at 5K race pace, or do an anaerobic threshold pace. And so that run is also a very important run to keep pushing up your anaerobic threshold, the tempo to kind of sustain it, and then the long run to just keep building your base. And each of those have different importance depending on what you're training for. So a marathon, your long run becomes very important and your tempo run becomes very important. But I would say interval training is still important to keep your speed up. The other thing is, the nice thing about just running 3 days a week and doing cross training is that it really gives you a lot more flexibility. And so a lot of people run into problems where they have these really aggressive running schedules that they put themselves on, and then they have work or other things in their life that gets in the way, and it gets frustrating and they get burned out. And so by having the 3 runs a week, you can adjust things. So you can adjust if you've got it's just raining hard, or you get an ice storm or something and you just can't run that day. I'm not a big fan of, I don't like running on the treadmill. So some of you might say, well, I'll just go to the treadmill those days and still do my workout, and that's great. I'm not a big fan of running on treadmills. So for me, it was really nice to be able to adjust for the weather. And, if it's just pouring down rain, and a lot of times I'll go out in the rain anyways, or go out if it's just snowing out. But if it's just a day that's just not conducive to running, you can adjust a day and it's not a big deal. With 3 days a week, there's plenty of room. And even, it's not even just the weather, but there are some days that you're just not 100% feeling good. I've had times where I've had a long run planned and I am just not feeling it that morning. And just, in fact, this last weekend, I was planning on a 6-7 mile run for my long run and only did 5 because, my body just wasn't feeling it that day, and my legs felt tired and dead. But the other option is I could have waited until today to do it instead of yesterday. And 3 days a week, it's easy to adjust and still get a rest day in between. And then just to deal with your other commitments. So work, travel, something that happens with the kids, whatever, it gives you that flexibility. So it's really powerful, and I think it helps keep people motivated when they only feel like they've got to do those 3 runs every week, and they really focus and make those quality runs. The other thing that I'm not a big advocate of, and I'm certainly not an elite runner, so is I'm not a big fan on counting mileage. I've run most of my, and part of, I think, me staying with the sport this long and staying healthy generally for this long is not running super high mileage. I'm running somewhere between 15 and 30 miles a week throughout my running career. If I'm just getting back into something and I've been out, say I was out with an injury for a month or so, I'll be doing less than 15 miles a week. I might be doing 9 or 10 miles a week, trying to get back into it again. And even for marathon training, so I was very happy to accomplish my goal of qualifying for a Boston Marathon, and I was able to do it with 3 days a week of running, with focus and plans for those 3 days, and building my long miles. So when I got to the longest miles, when I'm running 18, 19 miles for my long runs, I was probably doing about 30, maybe just over 30 miles a week for those few weeks. But most of the time, even for marathon training, 20, 25 miles a week. And I was successfully able to train and compete and qualify for Boston. And I think it helped me stay healthy and helped me train through that. The other thing that I'm at about 185 pounds, and so running marathons at 185 pounds is harder than somebody who's 140 pounds or 120 pounds. And so for me, running that less mileage was helpful. The amount of mileage depends on your goals. So I was up at around 30 miles for marathons. If you're just doing 5Ks, your mileage may be down in that 10 to 15 miles a week, and that might be just fine for just doing 5Ks and accomplishing that goal. I think as far as growing into becoming a runner, think about it as a long-term lifestyle change, as opposed to, hey, I've got friends that are into running, there's a race coming up, I'm just going to train like crazy and get myself ready for that race. If you look at it as a very short kind of a whim, that's one of the areas where people get injured and may get discouraged to stay with the sport. So you really have to think of it as a lifestyle change that you're going to grow into slowly, and it takes a long time for the body to adjust to running if you haven't been running, if you've had no history in running at all. So even with those tempo and speed work things that I said earlier, if you've never run before, you're just going to build base mileage. So you're just going to run easy and just work the mileage up slowly over time. And what I've found is that your wind, you're getting feeling winded when you're running, and just you got to stop and catch your breath. That is the first thing that improves, and also the first thing that goes away when you detrain. Your overall muscles and their adaptation to the runs. It takes longer, it takes months to build up, and even adaptations even happening over years. But I kind of put it on the order of months to start feeling more in shape in your muscles. And then your bones and joints take years. And there's a lot of data out there that shows that runners have stronger bones, stronger joints. And so it actually is some pounding is actually beneficial for you, but you have to adapt to it, and it takes a long time to adapt to it. So if you go on too strong too early, you're risking those injuries. So really think of it as a progression over time. And with that, the other piece of advice that I'd give, and what I've seen a lot recently, is people will get into the sport of running, and their first goal, once they get into running, is they want to run the marathon. And the marathon is a great event. It's a great lifetime achievement. I'm going to give you the advice of, if you're starting out running and you're getting your base miles and you're trying to figure out your first goals, try to get fast. Try to run 5Ks and 10Ks and build your speed, especially like if you're a younger runner. So many people will get into their 20s and discover running and want to go straight to that marathon, And I'm going to argue that is the best time for you to develop your speed. And I'll take the analogy of elite runners. If you look at a lot of elite runners out there, and you can kind of go through over the years, many of them, the greatest marathoners didn't start out as marathoners. A lot of the greatest marathoners started out, in high school. They were running, 1,500 meters and, the distance track 2-milers, that sort of thing. And then in college, they might have moved up and discovered the 5K, and started running 5 and 10Ks in their 20s. And you'll see a lot of elite marathoners don't really get into the marathon into the late 20s, and really start from those shorter races and speed. And I think it's your opportunity to get fast. And I found people that go to the marathon too early and try to focus on the long races too early in their running careers, that they never develop the speed that they could have. And that speed also will help you in the marathon. And there's a lot of evidence out there that shows that intensity, as far as fitness and weight loss and all those things, having that higher intensity workouts is really important in accomplishing those goals. So that's another reason to focus on that. So my advice for a lot of people starting out running, when you first get into it and you really start saying, hey, I want to race or whatever, try to make yourself a fast 5 and 10K runner. And then when you start to accomplish some of your goals in the 5 to 10K, then start working your way up if you want to go longer races into the half marathon, ultra running, what other things you might want to do, triathlons. And all of those are great things. It's one of my, proud moments was qualifying and qualifying for Boston Marathon. But I was very happy to spend, most of my 20s really focused on 5 to 10K races. And I think that really built my base and really kind of set me on a good trajectory for running for a long time. Plus, there's a lot more races to run. You can run a 5 or 10K race in spring, fall, almost every week if you want. So you can have more opportunities to race and improve. So it's just I think a better option, and that marathon will always be there. I qualified for Boston in my early 40s, so I didn't qualify. I didn't emphasize the marathon as much younger. I did run a marathon earlier, but I think there's plenty of time to finish that marathon and get fast in the marathon. So that's kind of one of my biggest thing there. And also set realistic goals for yourself. So, my first marathon, I wasn't going to try to qualify for Boston, my first marathon ever. I wanted to see how I could do in a marathon. And so my first goal was to get under 4 hours. And I was very happy to get well under 4 hours. But I try to set a realistic goal. And in all your distances, set those realistic goals. The only other thing that I'm going to touch on is taking appropriate time off for injuries. Incredibly important. There's lots of videos out there on videos and recovery and things to do. I try to do all those things. I'm stretching. I'm doing yoga videos now. I'm doing massage, foam rolling. All of those things are very helpful. And everybody eventually gets injured. So it's another thing to think about is no matter how you do it, eventually you'll get an injury. And hopefully it won't be a bad one, but everybody gets them from time to time. And the biggest thing is getting out of them and being able to take the time off when you need to, do the rehab if you need to do rehab. And like I said, there's lots of other videos out there on how to do that. And it's another reason why the 3-day a week and also having other activities that maintain your fitness, doing cross training is helpful, because when you get injured running, you can still do these other activities. And if you're experienced in doing them, you'll keep doing them, and you can just focus a little bit more on them, and you're not going to go bonkers when you're stuck on the sidelines not able to run. And so it is really helpful to have those other activities to help you get through the injuries and allow you to rest your bones or joints or ligaments that might have been injured from running. So with that, I think that's all I had. I just wanted to get some of those things out there. There's so many videos out there that have you training like an elite runner, and I think for many of you, you can accomplish your goals, stay motivated to run for a long time by exercising a little bit more balance and moderation. And I for one, I just wanted to say that I've accomplished my goals on 3 runs per week with a lot of focus on those 3 runs. And I think many of you, if you're can do the same if you want to go down that path. So anyways, hope this was helpful. Everybody's got different ideas on these things, but I just wanted to share some of mine. So with that, until next time, stay running, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.